Go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Little Bighorn Battlefield National Monument. My name is Michael Donahue, and I'm a seasonal ranger here, have been for 31 summers. And it's my privilege today to do a short talk on the Battle of Little Bighorn. We're here in our national cemetery where 5,000 veterans are buried from all different wars. Up by our visitor center, which is out of our picture here, is Custer's Last Stand Hill and the Indian Memorial, which pays homage to both sides who fought here. If you wander around the battlefield, you're going to see white markers and red markers, which indicate individual death sites on the field. And what's unique about Little Bighorn is that this is perhaps the only battlefield in the world that has such individual markers. A famous battle took place here on these grounds on June 25th, 26th of 1876. Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer and his 7th Cavalry will attack a massive village of Lakota and Cheyenne and a few Arapaho people under Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse. The battle for George Custer will be over with in less than 2 hours. There will be some other men from the 7th who will survive on a hillside about 4 miles away on what's called Reno-Benteen Hill. And we know on the evening of the 26th of June, the Indian village will pack up and leave those men alone on top of that hill. And the Battle of Little Bighorn would conclude. Let's start our talk on the other side of some mountains on the Cheyenne Reservation, which is perhaps about 35 miles from where we're standing. And there was a man over there. This man was in his mid-40s. His name was Sitting Bull, as we know him today, Tatonka Ayatonka to his people. And he was an Angpapa, and he was a Lakota. He's known for his bravery as a young man, as a warrior. By the time he's at Little Bighorn, he will be a spiritual leader and a medicine man. He was a great resistor. Not only did he fight the encroaching Indians around him, mortal enemies, but he also wanted to fight the white man. He never wanted to live on a reservation, never signed a treaty with the U.S. government. About 3 weeks before this battle, he's over there. He's going to be participating in a sun dance below some big rocks. And those rocks have drawings on them, etched into the stone, sandstone. And they've been there, some of them are over 3,000 years old. And on that rock over there is a small deer, about 3 or 4 inches wide. And over the years, a lightning bolt struck that big rock. And lightning bolt left a blue streak where the electricity came down and went right through that small deer. And today they're known as the Deer Medicine Rocks, a sacred place to the Lakota this day. And below those rocks, Sitting Bull will, without food or water, dance for several days, and occasionally glancing at the sun. But the thing that is going to be really tough on him is he's had 50 pieces of skin removed from each arm, a sacrifice to the everywhere spirit on the behalf of his people. And after dancing in the sun, he will pass out and he will arise and he will tell his people he has received a vision. And the vision is that soldiers are going to fall into his camp upside down like grasshoppers. To him, that meant there's going to be a great victory over the Bluecoats. That was a prophecy that will come true. But he also warned his people, whatever you do when we whip these Bluecoats, do not take the belongings from their bodies. Don't take any bounty, otherwise something terrible will happen to our people. Well, he will do that dance, he will prophesy, and people hear about this on the reservation. They're coming out every day to get away from the dreaded reservation life. He also has bands out here that never lived on the reservation and never signed a treaty. Men like Crazy Horse, one of the greatest warriors of the plains, is also in this camp. And as they move along Rosebud Creek and Reno Creek and eventually Little Bighorn over here, they will have a massive village. By the 25th of June, there will be approximately 6,000 to 8,000 people camped down along the Greasy Grass River. That's what they call it. You'll have perhaps 1,500 to 2,000 warriors over there. They're not expecting a soldier attack right away. As a matter of fact, the 25th of June, they're going about their business. Women are digging up wild turnips. Young men are watching the horses, probably 15 to 20,000 horses grazing above the camp. And you would have seen 6 large circles of teepees down there. A lot of people are sleeping in because they stayed up late, because they were doing victory dances. They had met soldiers under George Crook about a week earlier and sent him back packing the other direction towards Wyoming. And so they feel confident. They didn't think anyone would dare attack a village this big. That's what's happening out here with the Lakota and Cheyenne in June of 1876. However, there's things happening back in the East. This country's about to have a birthday party. We're about to celebrate 100 years as a great nation. And in Philadelphia, they're having a world exposition. You can see the biggest steam engine in the world. And you can see the arm of the Statue of Liberty, a gift from France. You can pay a small fee and walk up that to the torch. Many things are happening. The first phone is invented in 1876. And of course, Budweiser beer, pretty important. In 1876, that will be invented. But there's also something else terrible happening in America. There's a terrible recession, the Panic of 1873, which has thrown this country into terrible economic strife. Perhaps 19 to 20% unemployment. Every day, more and more immigrants, especially Germans and Irish, are getting off the boat. They're looking for jobs. They can't find any work. Some of them will raise their hand for $13 a month and join the U.S. Cavalry and end up out here with George Custer. Well, people are demanding, what are you going to do about this? The Indians are not using the land wisely. We believed in manifest destiny back east. Get them off the land. Use it for farming, for ranching. They weren't using it properly according to the white man's ideas. They thought it was their God-given right to take this. They looked down on the Indians as being less than human, savages, barbarians. It's our job to make Christian farmers out of each and every Indian. Those were some of the belief systems back in the 1870s back east. Well, the government's listening. There's pressure on President Grant to do something. They will discover gold in the Black Hills, and that could be a stimulus package. But the Black Hills are owned by the Lakota from the Treaty of 1868. Grant tries to buy the Black Hills from the Lakota, but they will not sell. And that angers President Grant. So he will give an ultimatum. By the way, to sell the Black Hills, he has to have 2/3 of the vote of the Lakota people. And many of them are out here roaming with Sitting Bull. How do I get them back, he says. He decides to give an ultimatum. Get off the land, roaming out here, get back on your reservation, which, by the way, is in the middle of South Dakota. And you got to do it by the 31st of January, 1876. Otherwise, I will consider you hostile, and I'll send the army out to punish you. Well, Sitting Bull says, bull. And he and his people stay out here living the old way of life, traditional way of life, hunting the buffalo, hunting the antelope down in the valley, and daring the army to come out. When Grant doesn't get the response he wants, he will send out military forces from 3 directions. He will send Colonel John Gibbon from Montana. He will never find this village. George Crook will come from Wyoming with about 1,000 men. He'll be turned back at the Battle of Rosebud a week before this fight here. But there's a 3rd column coming under General Alfred Terry, a lawyer, a very cautious man. And under his command is going to be a guy named Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer. A Civil War hero for the North. He will fight in 40 battles, including one at Gettysburg. And he's a brevet brigadier general at a young age. They call him the boy general. Flamboyant, long hair in the Civil War, a very flashy uniform. He believed in what he had was called Custer's luck. He always seemed to be in the right place at the right time. He'll be under General Terry's command. As they get close out here, they will find a trail leading towards the Little Bighorn. And General Terry will say, I'm going to join up with Gibbon here, and we're going to come around a different direction. Custer, you go down and follow the trail. And he gives him pretty much carte blanche to do what he needs when he's close to the enemy. Well, Custer and about 650 men of the 7th Cavalry will follow that trail, and it gets fresher and hotter by the day. On the day before this, he will be very close on the divide between the Reno Creek area and the Rosebud Creek area. There's a high point over there called the Crow's Nest. He will send his Indian scouts. Who are these Indian scouts helping George Custer? They're going to be Crows and Arikararas. They hate the people down in his camp, traditional enemies for many years. As a matter of fact, Little Bighorn, where this camp is actually Crow reservation given to them in the Treaty of 1868. So the Crows want them off their land. So there'll be Indians fighting Indians here at Little Bighorn as well. Well, we know that Custer and those scouts will get up to the high point, and from 15 miles away, they will see smoke and a little dust, and a pony herd, portions of a pony herd. All the scouts, there's a whole lot of Indians down there somewhere from the looks of the trail. Custer's original plan was to wait a day, attack the following day. When he comes off the Crow's Nest at High Point, he discovers that he's probably been detected by warriors out hunting. He decides to attack immediately. He will begin to advance towards the Valley of Little Bighorn, where the Indian camp was, stretched out for about 1.5 miles, by the way. He will divide his forces. He has pack mules, over 150 of them, with a lot of the ammunition on them. He will detail extra men to watch and guard the pack mules because they cannot keep up with the horses. He will have Captain Reno-Benteen, who's a Civil War veteran, a man from Virginia who doesn't particularly care for George Custer. He will tell Benteen to take 125 men and go scout the hills to the left and go all the way to the valley. He will look over at Major Marcus Reno, a Civil War veteran. He will tell him to take about 135 men and march right on the left side of a creek called Reno Creek, which emptied into Little Bighorn. Custer takes about 209 men, and he'll be on the other side of that creek. And so all three of these companies are going and trying to flush out any warriors they might see in front of them. Pack mules behind. Well, getting close to about noon, we know that George Custer will be getting very close to the river. And they will see a small party of warriors fleeing. They haven't seen the village yet. Custer tells Major Marcus Reno to take his men, 135 of them with the Indian scouts, and attack whatever's in front of him. And you'll be reinforced by the entire regiment. We know that Reno will swing around into the valley, and he will attack that massive Indian camp with only 135 men, perhaps. We know that when Reno attacks, Custer takes his 210 men and goes up on a high ridge off to the right or the north. He looks down before Reno's attack, and he can begin to see that it's a massive village for the first time. He will take his hat off, and he will cheer his men on. Hooray, boys, we've caught him napping. Let's finish this up, and we'll go home to our station. He will lead his men down a trail, or basically a ravine that leads right down the river. And as he gets close, he will send back what will become his last message. Handed to a young Italian immigrant, Giovanni Martini, today known as John Martin. Piece of paper is pulled out by W.W. Cook, Custer's adjutant, and written a message to Benteen, who's somewhere out there roaming around. Benteen, come on, big village, be quick. Bring packs, and bring the packs. Bring the ammunition. Bring whatever we need up here, quickly. The young boy will stick that message under his hat. He'll ride back. He'll find Benteen on the back trail, handing the message. And Benteen will come towards this battlefield a little quicker. Folks, it's probably midday according to the warriors. Reno attacks that massive village in the valley, and quickly he's surrounded by 600 warriors. He fights on the valley for 15 minutes. He pulls back in the timber where his horses are hidden. Warriors begin to penetrate there, including Crazy Horse. And they will drive those soldiers out of that, and they begin to race away to try to get across the river to some high ground. They'll be chased by hundreds of warriors, which they said it looked like a buffalo hunt, hunting down those soldiers. And Reno will lose 30 to 40 men trying to escape. They'll chase Reno to the high hills across the river on the east side, and as he gets to the top of what's left of his beaten and bloodied command, here comes Benteen, who's not seen a single Indian all day. He rides up to Reno and says, "What's going on here?" Exasperated Reno looks, and he says, "Where's Custer? Have you seen him anywhere?" Benteen says, "I don't know where Custer is." Reno didn't know where he is either. But we know Benteen pulls out the piece of paper and shows it to Reno, the message to come over quick. They begin to hear gunfire to the north. Many of the men talk about that. We know later Reno and Benteen will say it was negligible. They didn't hear much gunfire at all, which contradicts many of the other soldiers. They were in no hurry to go down that direction. After a while, one of Custer's friends, Captain Thomas Weir, says, "We got to go, guys. We can't keep staying down here. Custer must be down there." He will take his company of about 40 men, and he will ride up to a high point, which is halfway between the two battlefields as we know it today, a point called Weir Point, named after him. As he looks down about 3 miles away, he will see smoke and dust and chaos and hundreds of warriors shooting into the tall grass. He doesn't know what he's witnessing, but he's seeing probably what's known as Custer's last stand. Warriors begin to pour towards that hill where Weir is. Those soldiers fall back. They fall back on top of a hillside where they take their forks and knives and tin cups and begin to dig trenches. The warriors will surround them, and they will fight on that hill for over 24 hours. Bravery on both sides. Benteen will take control over Reno's command down there. He will help those men to survive. After a bloody 24 hours, the warriors decide they've had enough. They see more soldiers coming from the north. It'll be General Terry. They take their families and they begin to head to the south towards the Bighorn Mountains. We know on the 27th of June that General Terry will arrive, and he's passed by the other battlefield, and he sent some scouts out to look around. As he goes down on top of Reno-Benteen Hill and where we're standing, he will ride up, and they all gave Terry 3 cheers because they had survived this terrible siege. But they noticed Terry wasn't smiling. He was crying like a baby. And they said, "General Terry, what's wrong with you?" He says, "Well, have you seen Custer anywhere?" That's what they ask him. And General Terry responds sullenly, "We found George Custer's men. They're 4 miles away on a ridge, and they're all dead." Well, we know that today, from the Indian accounts, kind of what happened to George Custer after he sent that last message. We know that the warriors drove Reno away. They responded by coming to the other end of the battlefield. We know that Custer tried to cross the river, but is unsuccessful. He will pull back to a long ridge today, which is called Battle Ridge. He will deploy about 100 men on a hillside today known as Calhoun Hill, named after his brother-in-law who is fighting in that area. George Custer will take 2 companies along with his headquarters group, and he will head down behind where we're standing today, go all the way to the river. And many people think perhaps he's trying to capture non-combatants because there's about 3,000 down there close to the river. For whatever reason, he will not get to that river. We know that the warriors will first descend on Calhoun Hill where those 100 men are. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of warriors will surround that hill. Lame white man, a Cheyenne warrior, says, "There's not many soldiers down here. We can kill them all." And he will lead a charge along with Crazy Horse and White Bull and many others. And there's just so many warriors, they will quickly swamp those men. Calhoun is killed. Keogh is killed. Harrington is killed. All their men are killed. The lame white man who led that charge is shot and killed as well. Left along the ridge, he will be scalped by some of his fellow allied Indians thinking that he was a scout for Custer. A lot of confusion, smoke and dust and chaos on that ridge. A few men from Calhoun Hill will get to the hillside where Custer comes to. He comes back from the river and takes a high ground, a hill today known as Custer Hill. And that fight will be over with us in about 30 minutes. The warriors, having killed everybody else, will surround the 100 men there on Custer Hill. And sometimes towards the end of the fight, there's going to be a bugle call, and 40 men, we know them as Company E, come off a ridge and try to drive the warriors back, and they stay in the area kind of where we are today, the National Cemetery. That leaves about 50 men on top of that hill, including George Custer and many other officers. The warriors described the fight, smoke and dust. It was like walking in a cloud. The gunfire was like taking a blanket and ripping it in half. Warriors shot arrows that rained or the arrows looked like rain coming on top of that hill. By this time, they had captured many of Custer's weapons from the other end of the ridge, and they turned those weapons, along with the many repeating weapons, up to 200 that they had gotten from the U.S. government and traders out west. They opened up fire. Kate Bighead was watching the battle. She was a Cheyenne woman. She said at the end you couldn't see much of anything. She could see a ring of dead horses at the top of the hill, and the soldiers were hiding behind them, but we really couldn't see much. We just kept pouring lead and arrows by the thousands falling there until finally, after about 20 or 30 minutes, the shots quit coming. Warriors run to the top of the hill. One of them is a young boy named Big Beaver, and Big Beaver gets up there and he helps to kill those men around Custer. As he looks down after killing those men on the hill, he sees about 30 men still in the cemetery fighting, and those men had run out of ammunition. They take off, and they run down into a deep ravine, their last means of escape to try to get to the river. But they'll be chased by several hundred, if not thousands, of warriors. And today, when you take the trail to the deep ravine, you will find where 28 men were found in the bottom of that ravine. And the Battle of Little Bighorn was over down here. How many warriors were killed here? We think about 60, maybe 100. 210 soldiers killed down here with George Custer. We know there's more killed down there with Reno-Benteen on the hill and down in the valley. Over 260 cavalry casualties. We know that while this is the end of the battle here, this will aggravate and anger the people back east that are celebrating 100 years as a great country. They will send out what they call Custer's Avengers, and they will relentlessly pursue the people that were down in his camp. We know that Sitting Bull will go to Canada. We'll stay up there until 1881. We know that Crazy Horse gives up a year later as they try to put him in a guardhouse at Camp Robinson over in Nebraska as we know it today. He will try to break out. He'll try to resist, and they'll bayonet him through the side. And the great warrior Crazy Horse will die and is buried in a secret place where no one could find his body. We know that Sitting Bull will eventually surrender in 1881. For a while, he'll travel around the North Buffalo's Bill Wild West show for just a short time. And then right before the massacre at Wounded Knee, Indian police will try to arrest him. There'll be a resist there. He'll be shot and killed before Wounded Knee. The nomadic way of the Indians was over. This is called Custer's last stand, but it became the last stand of Lakota and Cheyenne. What happened to Reno and Benteen and Captain Weir? Well, they could never forget what they saw here. It would haunt all of them. Captain Weir will drink himself to death about 6 months later, unable to save George Custer. Reno will suffer from what we call post-traumatic stress today, probably. He took out his problems in the bottle. He'll eventually be drummed out of the Army. He'll die as a pauper of tongue cancer. Eventually dug up from a pauper's grave. In the 1960s, he will be moved and buried right here under our flagpole as our highest ranking officer in our national cemetery. Benteen will hate George Custer till the day he dies. He will eventually die of a stroke, buried in Atlanta, then dug up. And today he's buried in Arlington National Cemetery. Folks, this battle destroyed lives on both sides. For some people, it destroyed an entire way of life for these native peoples living out here. We encourage you to come to the battlefield today and look at these markers and memorials and remember what they stood for. Many people come here with different opinions and different ideas and different moods. And to me, this is a very special place in America. It's a tragic story, no matter which side you look at. But when I look at memorials on that top of that hill, both red ones and white ones, I think about what brought these people to this place. Something called racism, prejudice, looking down on people because of their belief systems or their race. As we look through the window of history, I think it's important to remember those things and not repeat them. Those are some of the lessons we can learn from Little Bighorn, a place where ghosts walk in broad daylight. Thank you for listening to my Battle Talk. This is Michael Donahue signing off. Have a great day. It's off. Okay. As long as it's not full red, you're good.
I couldn't tell.
Yeah. As long as you hit it, you're okay.
Oh,
It's 23 minutes.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty slick.
That was good. Yeah.
For not doing it in a year.
Yeah, absolutely didn't miss a beat.
I got everything down. Didn't miss anything, I don't think.
Yeah,
Kind of summarized.
Yeah, you didn't miss a beat.
We're done for the day. We got an hour. Let's go down there and putter around. You want to?
Sure.
I need to work on the Mars talk.